What if I told you? There's a photograph of me, taken 7 years before I was born. And the woman standing next to me disappeared that same night. This isn't just a mystery. It's a warning.
I found the photo in a box marked Summer '85, tucked deep in my late mother's attic. Dust clung to the edges, but the image was clear, a group of townsfolk at the annual harvest festival. Smiling faces, old hairstyles, bright clothes. And there, in the back row, was a young woman named Nora Ward who vanished weeks after that festival. Standing beside her was me. Except I wasn't born until 1992. The local library's archives smelled of paper and secrets. Microfilm reels whirred as I searched for mentions of Nora. Articles painted her as bright, beloved, and a little wild. No one was ever charged. My mother's name appeared once, listed as a volunteer that summer. I didn't remember her ever talking about it. I visited Blue Heron, the oldest bar in town. Behind the counter, Jack Rotelli, Nora's former boyfriend, froze when I showed him the photo. "She left," he muttered, eyes darting. "Don't dig." At home, an envelope slid under my door. Inside, a photocopy of the same festival photo, this time with my face circled in red. Scrawled beneath, "Don't become her." My Aunt Maggie called unexpectedly, insisting we meet. Over coffee, she warned, some questions shouldn't be asked. Your mother knew that. She avoided my gaze when I pressed for details. I found a volunteer list from '85, my mother's name was paired with security. Strange for a school teacher. One witness recalled seeing Nora arguing with a man near the storage sheds that night. The description fit Jack. The police file was thin, no physical evidence, just statements and rumors. But one photo in the file showed the same shed, door ajar, a shadow inside. I began interviewing older residents who had been at the festival. Most claimed to remember nothing unusual, but a retired deputy hinted at political money passing hands that night. Another woman swore she saw my mother walking away from the sheds with tears in her eyes. I confronted Jack again. This time, he cracked, she found something she wasn't supposed to. Your mom tried to help her, but it was too late. Before I could ask more, he walked out. That evening, I dug deeper into my mother's belongings. Between old sewing patterns, I found a hidden envelope with receipts for cash deposits, amounts that matched the ledger in the police photo. Each was signed only with initials. Later, in my mother's old sewing box, I found a small brass key labeled shed. My aunt called again, her voice low, "If you use that key, you can't go back." I held the key in my palm for a long time after the call ended, its cool metal pressing into my skin like it carried the weight of the entire town's silence. The engraved letters were worn smooth as if my mother had handled it often, maybe turning it over in her hands during sleepless nights. I set it down on the table and poured myself a drink I didn't need. The taste of whiskey burned down my throat, and I kept staring at the key, wondering if Aunt Maggie's warning was genuine concern, or a threat. Sleep was impossible. Every creak in the old house felt amplified, every shadow heavier than it should be. Around 2 a.m. I caught movement outside my front window. The silhouette of a figure lingered under the lamppost, not moving, just watching. I grabbed my phone and stepped toward the curtains, but by the time I pulled them back, the street was empty. The next morning, I drove to the outskirts of town where the festival grounds stood quiet. The sheds were in a clearing behind the main stage area, a row of weathered wooden buildings with peeling paint and rusted hinges. My fingers found the brass key in my pocket. It slid into the lock of the third shed from the left with an unsettling ease, as though it had been waiting for me. The hinges groaned as the door opened. Dust swirled in the shaft of light that pierced the darkness. Inside were old festival props, banners, crates of unused decorations, mannequins dressed in faded costumes. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and something metallic, faint but sharp. In the back corner stood a heavy filing cabinet. The drawers squealed as I opened them. Inside, I found manila folders stuffed with paperwork, vendor contracts, permits, donation receipts. But tucked between them was something that didn't belong, a leather-bound notebook with Ward embossed on the cover. Nora's last name. The first few pages were normal, notes about festival events, schedules, and volunteer rosters. But deeper in, the handwriting grew hurried. Entries mentioned overheard arguments between JR and M about missing money. There were notes about a meeting behind Shed 3 on the night she vanished. And then, a final page, scrawled so messily it was barely legible. If anything happens to me, tell Elle. She'll know what to do. Elle, could that be my mother? Her name was Laura. My hands shook as I turned the page, but it was blank. Then I heard it, a faint scuff of footsteps outside. I froze, listening. They moved slowly along the gravel, stopping right outside the shed door. My instinct told me to hide, but my curiosity outweighed my fear. I took a step forward and the footsteps retreated. When I swung the door open, the clearing was empty except for the faint smell of cigarette smoke. That evening, I took the notebook home. I sat at my kitchen table under the weak light of a single bulb, reading the entries again and again. My mind kept circling back to JR, Jack Rotelli. And M could be Maggie. I didn't sleep again that night. Instead, I went through the boxes of my mother's things in the attic. In the bottom of one, under layers of old clothes, I found a showbox wrapped in brown paper. Inside were dozens of photographs, candid shots of people in town, many of whom I recognized from the festival photo. But in each, Nora was present, sometimes smiling, sometimes glancing nervously over her shoulder. One photo stopped me cold. It was taken in front of the Blue Heron Bar, and standing beside Nora was my mother. They weren't posing, it looked like a conversation caught mid-sentence. Nora's face was tense, my mother's hand gripping her arm. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, 2 days before. I needed answers. The next day, I went to see Maggie. She was in her kitchen, kneading bread dough with a force that seemed almost violent. When I placed the photo on the counter, her hands stilled. "You went to the shed," she said flatly. I didn't answer. Her jaw tightened. "Laura wanted to protect you. She burned most of what was in there. But she couldn't bring herself to destroy the rest." "What happened to Nora?" I asked. Maggie's eyes darted to the window, as if checking for eavesdroppers. Nora was going to expose them. The money, the bribes, the whole rotten core of this town. Your mother, she tried to help her leave. But someone found out. Who? She shook her head. If I tell you, you'll be next. That night, I received another envelope under my door. Inside was a single Polaroid, the back of my head, taken from outside my own kitchen window. And beneath it, in block letters, "You're already next." The following days blurred into a haze of paranoia and determination. I began cross-referencing the names in the shed's ledger with property records, campaign donations, and old news articles. Patterns emerged, the same people receiving unreported donations and then approving shady construction projects. Jack Rotelli's name appeared more than once, alongside initials I couldn't place. I took the notebook to the retired deputy who had hinted about political money. He studied it quietly, then said, "You didn't hear this from me, but some of those names, they were untouchable. Still are. Even now?" I asked. He nodded. "Especially now." The final break came from an unexpected source, a roll of film I'd found in the shed. I had it developed at a photography shop 2 towns over. The photos showed the festival at night, taken from a distance. In one frame, Nora stood in front of Shed 3, speaking with Jack. In the next, a third figure approached, a tall man in a dark coat. The final frame was blurry, but I could see Nora's face turned toward the camera, eyes wide. I recognized the man instantly. The old mayor. Now the pieces began to click into place. The money, the meetings, my mother's role, she must have been caught between protecting Nora and protecting me. I knew I couldn't stop. Not now. But I also knew Maggie was right. Once I opened that door, there was no going back. And I'd already turned the key.